What's up, y'all? Tempe against police violence here on Rio Salado and what is that date? Um, we're here at getting ready to be at the county attorney's candidate forum. So basically, it's a bunch of people that are running to be county attorney. We're just getting ready to walk up over there. Safety man, what's up? Sarah, hello. We got Phoenix Cop Watch behind me. We got something going on up there. There's red and blues. You see it? There's red and blues up there at the next green light. Okay, so this building should be right up here on our left. Oh, sorry, what's up? Yeah. I got my sign. I think it's here. Yeah, it's in there. I believe so. Is this where the candidate form is? Alright. Okay. All the way around. She told me to go right there. Well, you have to go all the way around. We're in Mesa on Rio Salado, just between Date and Cherry. Bill Norwood, hello. Autotron, hello. So it looks like the entrance is over here. So,
Just Tempe against police violence. So we found that door.
yeah.
It's packed in there. They already started. They just got started.
Okay.
About 10 minutes ago. So
For sure.
Being in defense attorney has been one of the most enriching experiences of my life, but it reawakened in me to a lot of those helpless feelings that I felt as a boy, because the power to affect outcomes in criminal cases largely belongs in the hands, or is in the hands of the prosecution. I'm running for Maricopa County Attorney because for decades, this county has ignored what researchers know, that there's more intelligent, more effective, cheaper, more productive ways of responding to crime. I've been preparing for this battle for my entire life, and I'm ready to take the battle to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. With your support, we will effect criminal justice change here in Maricopa County, where it's desperately needed.
Thank you very much. Julie?
Good evening.
How about now? Good evening. I'm Julie Gunnigal, and I want to be your next Maricopa County Attorney. I was born and raised in Maricopa County. I left to go get a degree in chemistry from NAU and my law degree from Notre Dame. I prosecuted in Indiana and was later tasked to become a financial crime and public corruption attorney in Cook County, Illinois, where I prosecuted racketeering and some of the worst financial and most complicated financial crimes around. But most importantly, it was my job to hold our elected officials accountable when they stole public funds. I am running for this position because I believe that this office does not have its priorities straight. I believe that when we have 18-year-olds who are doing time for smoking a joint, but yet pension fund managers can steal from retirees and make a bonus, when we have a system that is set up where it is easier to be rich and guilty than it is to be poor and innocent, that we need change. You can learn more about me, Julie Gunnigal, on my website, gunnigal2020.com, where I have the plans that we're going to need to get us to this place. And I do hope that you'll join me, because real reform is possible, but we need to get to the heart of the problem, which is that we have a perverse profit motive when it comes to prosecution, and we have absolutely unchecked power when it comes to our public officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Up next, we have a series of prepared questions alternating between the Humanist Society and the ACLU that we will be asking you for a minute each, and we're going to be starting with a different person each time to make sure it continues to be mixed up. Will Knight, if you are ready to be up first for the following question.
Absolutely.
You'll each have a minute to respond. At the Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix, our primary public policy focus is defending secular government and a robust separation between church and state. What, in your view, is the most important way that a prosecutor can work to defend the rights of religious minorities and those who are not religious at all in Maricopa County?
The law in this space is absolutely clear. The free establishment clause, the free exercise clause, and the establishment clause create a constitutionally grounded division between church and state. Yet for too long, and this is also symptomatic of the tough on crime era, for too long we've been politicizing and weaponizing our justice system. Tough on crime, lock him up, lock her up. You hear that long enough, and then we end up in a situation where the President of the United States is out here talking about criminally punishing women for exercising their fundamental rights to reproductive liberty. Under my administration, we will not enforce any laws that are grounded on religious animus, and we will investigate and punish any crimes that are motivated by religious animus.
Yeah, Joe Arpaio's running for sheriff again.
Thank you. As a prosecutor for 15 years and the chief prosecutor for 5, I have had to work daily to make sure that we as prosecutors and the people in my office did separate church and state. We did not investigate or look at the religious or non-religious backgrounds of anyone. And as I mentioned earlier, we completed the diversity committee and commission to make sure that everyone felt included and inclusive in the city of Glendale. So I will now, as the city attorney, or excuse me, the city prosecutor or county attorney rather, I apologize, to make sure that no one is prosecuted based on their personal choices, on the color of their skin, or their religious freedoms or backgrounds. Thank you.
Brent? We can just go stage left in order each time.
Okay. Well, a substantial aspect of criminal justice reform is a dramatic expansion of treatment programs, and currently, faith is an essential element for many people who are seeking to effectuate personal transformation. And it's something that we really need for everybody in the criminal justice system. But the problem is, I have a friend who dropped out of substance abuse treatment because the overtly religious nature of the program conflicted with his own personal spiritual beliefs. Because treatment expansion is such a huge part of my policy platform, it's absolutely essential that we recognize that there are individuals who need access to programs that don't require them to be in conflict their own personal belief or non-belief. I will fight vigorously as the county attorney to expand treatment programs as a way of rehabilitating offenders, but I'll ensure that each person in the prison system, in diversion, and in reentry systems after prison has access to programs that are designed for the good beliefs that they already have, whether they're non-believers, minority religious believers, or members of majority faiths.
So over the walls of the Supreme Court, it says equal justice under law. And it's really easy in Arizona to get the impression that non-believers and members of religious minorities aren't equal under the law. It's easy to get that impression when your previous county attorney spent $40,000 to fly out an Islamophobe conspiracy theorist to train police officers. It's really easy to get that impression when he personally intervened in the plea negotiation of the 2 Tempe women that desecrated that mosque with their children and put the video online.
We're talking about Jennifer
In my
Harrison
view, this
and
is a culture problem. The way you can fix a culture problem
and
in
some
a
other
prosecutor's
girl.
office is accountability and transparency. I have committed myself in a Gunnigal administration to unprecedented transparency and accountability by the collection of uniform data that ACLU is proposing, by making sure that we keep track of who we're offering the agreements to make sure that it's not in a racially or religious biased way. And last, to make myself available at community meetings like these to be held accountable to these promises.
What do I have
Jennifer
different than what's been
Harrison.
said here? I think what's been
She's
said is
the
wonderful.
girl that
Any
was
one of
causing
us
problems
is better
yesterday
than the person
at
who
the
decided
ASU
not to
Joe
come.
Arpaio meeting.
But what I bring to this is 30 years, not only in criminal defense, but as a constitutional scholar. The separation of church and state is bedrock. If you don't get that, you're not American and you're not patriotic, period. The last county attorney, you do realize that part of this job has a civil section too. The last county attorney directed the civil section, because of his religious beliefs, to not handle the adoption of same-sex couples. Adoptions are a social good. You need to find suitable people to take children off the public rolls, but he decided that suitable same-sex couples were not subject and could not have that benefit that the statute requires him to do. That absolutely will not happen when I'm county attorney. And I have 30 years as a constitutional scholar. Many of you in this room have heard me talk about this. I am on record on this and have been for years. If you don't get this, you're not American, and nobody who gets this should be county attorney. And that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
Our next question, we're going to start with Tamika. Arizona has the 5th highest incarceration rate in the nation. Will you commit to a specific decarceration goal, and if so, how do you plan to reach that goal?
Yes, as county attorney, I do commit to de-incarceration. Currently in Arizona, we spend $1.1 billion a year incarcerating people in the Department of Corrections. And 47% of those people are incarcerated for nonviolent crimes. When elected as county attorney, I'm going to treat mental illness and addiction as public health issues, not criminal issues. I'm going to make sure that we create diversion programs and substance abuse programs that are affordable for people. Because what I have found is oftentimes when we create, or courts have created diversion programs, it's still prohibited because a person cannot afford to partake in the diversion programs. So I want to make sure that the programs that we institute are affordable for everyone, so that everyone can have the addiction, mental health needs that they need to avoid recidivism, and we can address the underlying problems. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
I'm absolutely committed to reducing the prison population in Arizona, but we have to remember why we need to do that. It's because prison has been proven to be the most expensive and least effective intervention available in a huge number of cases where we are currently sending people to prison. So when I say that I will not send people to prison for possession of drugs for personal use, period, it's because that's the right thing to do. We're going to send them to treatment because that works. That's why we're reducing the prison population. When I say that I'm going to expand diversion programs, because there are a huge number of people who would be much better served by entering into a program where they can avoid a permanent stigmatizing felony conviction in order to avoid a life of crime, that will reduce the prison population. But the reason why we're going to do that is because that's what works. If we ask ourselves the simple question, do the policies that we've been infecting for the last 5 decades in America, do they accomplish the objectives that we want to accomplish, which is the reduction of crime, the transformation of criminals into law-abiding, productive citizens? The unequivocal answer is no. The prison population must be reduced because it doesn't work. But the reason we are reducing the prison population is because we know there are methods that do, and those are the methods that we need to be following.
I've got 60 seconds to do what really requires about 6 days of conversation. Let's see what we can do. I'm the only candidate on stage tonight who has completed their ACLU questionnaire, and when I did that, I committed to a specific de-incarceration goal. I committed to a 26% reduction in our prison population by 2024. That brings us in line with the average across the nation. Now, make no mistake about it, that is both extremely aggressive and not nearly everything that we need to accomplish in order to be tough and smart and fair in Maricopa County. That position is 3 prongs. It is sentencing reform and using this office's power to stop charge stacking, Hannah priors, and disproportionate plea offers. It is creating diversion programs that work, that make sure that we treat mental illness and addiction like the public health crisis it is, and stopping charging marijuana while we're at it. And then last is stopping the revolving door of prison re-entry by creating long probation tails that don't serve the public's purpose and end up putting people right back in jail when they don't need to be. You can read more about my plan at the ACLU questionnaire.
Well, the answer to the question is absolutely yes. We need to reduce the prison population. Now, I started out by saying, yes, some people have to go to prison, but you need to have a change in office culture. And I don't negate anything everybody else has said here. These are good ideas. We need to implement them. I'm fully behind that. I'm fully committed to this. But the culture change you need is, yes, even if somebody needs to go to prison, that is not a cause for celebration if you're a prosecutor. That's still a failure. Yeah, sometimes people need to go there because the rest of us need to be safe, but that's a failure. And if you don't stop looking at it as, in other words, you have to stop looking at it as some big celebration when somebody goes away for a long time. No, it's a failure. And it's a tragic failure when you could do something else, provide something else. We are better than that as a society. We can do better, and this office is the key part of making that happen in Maricopa County, which contributes 60%, over 60% of the people incarcerated in the Department of Corrections. That's what we need to do. It's a change in culture as much as all the very good policies that have already been named here tonight.
The question calls for a specific plan, and 26% by 2024 sounds nice. I'd like to see where those numbers come from, because by my math, with my first year in office, I could reduce the prison population by more than 30%. And we can do that pretty simply. First step, everybody up here agrees, we stopped sending people to prison for simple drug possession. We also stopped sending people to prison for minor property offenses, like shoplifting. And I'm not pro shoplifting, but I'm against lighting money on fire, and I'm against making our communities less safe by sending people to prison who don't need to be there. That's 20%, that's day one. Stop sending those people to prison. That reduces the influx coming from Maricopa County by 20%. The other 10% does come from policy changes by no longer alleging these historic injustices as priors to put people into higher sentencing categories with mandatory minimums. And structural change to reduce the implicit bias baked into the system. But I want to talk a little bit about culture, because Ms. Venable may have submitted her questionnaire early, and you can go look at it. But you know what else you'll see on there? Is more tough on crime rhetoric. Tough on crime is the culture problem. We need to move away from tough on crime, and we need to move toward a harm-based, justice-oriented conception that asks the question, what's in the best interests of our community? And to bring about that cultural change, we need to depart from yesterday's rhetoric.
Thank you all. Our next question is, starting with Ryan Tate. One buzz phrase we often hear tossed around on social issues is religious freedom, and it's critical to unpack what that means. True freedom of religion requires freedom from religion, the right to practice any faith or no faith if you so desire, and not to have someone else's faith imposed on you through the policy process. How will you respond as a prosecutor when someone attempts to use the phrase freedom of religion as license to discriminate? And what will you do to protect those whose rights have been infringed by someone else's faith?
Well, I think maybe a classic example in the criminal law where this happens is in hate crimes. And in Arizona, we don't currently have hate crimes legislation except for a single sentencing enhancer, which allows a judge to give somebody more prison if their crime was based on bias. Hate crimes that are motivated by targeting somebody's religion, their sexual orientation, their ethnicity, their race, their national origin, their handicap status, are not just directed, or they're not just harmful for the victim at whom they're directed. They're actually harmful to a broader community of people who identify with that victim. And that's why hate crimes are so uniquely harmful. So many hate crimes victims don't report the crime because they fear that prosecutors will relate more with the perpetrator than the victim. And we've seen this in our community in Maricopa County. We're just gonna go talk about the Tempe Mosque, where these women videotape themselves desecrating a mosque and indoctrinating their children with alarming, hateful speech against Muslims. We need to send a clear message in the Maricopa County Attorney's Office that we will pursue hate crimes. And that starts with training the Maricopa prosecutors to identify those and reporting and collecting data to make sure that we're resolving those issues.
Thank you.
No worries. So I'm not afraid to call out discrimination when it is masquerading as religion. And I think that the county attorney is uniquely positioned in two distinct areas on this front. One, we absolutely, and on day one, will stop the discrimination against LGBTQ couples who want to adopt. I will never stop being an ally. It is one of the reasons that my campaign has been endorsed by the Stonewall Democrats and so many other leaders and organizations who stand for real equality. Second, I will never allow this office to impose religion on someone else's uterus. I have seen the way that, we've seen how this has worked out in other states where someone seeks to use the criminal law to impose penalties based on their own religious beliefs. I won't stand for it. It's one of our day one priorities that we are not going to prosecute, even in the event that Roe falls in those cases.
The vast majority of so-called freedom of religion cases today are utterly spurious arguments. They have nothing to do with the real thing. If somebody's discriminating against somebody, that's discrimination. In many cases, that's a crime. You don't have freedom of religion to sit there and say, I'm not going to help somebody or treat somebody or sell something to somebody if they don't conform to the notion of what marriage should be or what adoption should be. That's just wrong. This is fundamental constitutional issues. And I say yet again, if you don't get that, you're not American. Yes, I do believe in the right to choose, and this office will never prosecute somebody exercising that right, as long as I'm county attorney. And yes, if somebody commits a crime against somebody because of their religion, their race, or their lack of religion, that is wrong and should be doubly prosecuted and given attention. That's where the resources need to be put, not somebody who's trying to battle an addiction and to get themselves out of it. Thank you.
This is such an outstanding question because our elected predecessor to that office had such a nasty habit of politicizing animus. And I think your numbers might be a little low again, Julie, because AZ Central reported that he spent $70,000 on that Islamophobic trainer. He also refused to help a county employee facilitate a second parent adoption. That was my friend that he did that to. So I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I will put an end to politicizing and weaponizing our justice system. And you know that I'm going to do that. Not just that I'm not afraid. You know that I'm going to do that because of my record. Even before I was defending the indigent and advocating for immigrants, I helped bring marriage equality to Arizona. And I fought for second parent adoptions. When bakers and wedding planners can discriminate based on their religious animus, we have reason to be afraid. We have reason to be afraid that it could bleed further into this office and be politicized against us. I absolutely stand against all efforts to weaponize and politicize our justice system.
She's staring at the sign I have.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Tamika, go ahead.
So everyone has the right to equal protection under the law. When I was the city prosecutor, I created the Diversity Committee and Diversity Commission. One of our charges was to make sure that we advocated for partner benefits. We also did monthly trainings to make sure that we were inclusive, so that everyone knew that Glendale was made up of our unique selves. It was us. Maricopa County is also made up of our unique selves. No one should impose their personal freedoms or their personal opinions on another person's right to choose the way they live. I spoke to a former county attorney last week, and she told me that there were a number of people currently in the county attorney's office who are afraid to speak up, who are LGBTQ. And I told her that when elected as Maricopa County attorney, I will make sure that everyone in that office feels safe and comfortable. I, as a county attorney, will make sure that people are not discriminated against based on their religious freedoms or lack thereof. When I was a prosecutor, I did prosecute hate crimes. Thank you.
Can you just make sure y'all, when you're not using your microphone, is turned off, to maybe cut down on the echo? So, Julie, I'm gonna start with you for the next question. Phoenix police are one of the deadliest police forces in the nation. Cops are rarely prosecuted or even properly investigated when they are accused of misconduct. Will you commit to creating an independent unit of special prosecutors assigned specifically to police brutality cases?
Yes. And here I come with some more tough on crime rhetoric. I don't think that we should be light on police officers who commit misconduct and break the law. I think that we should hold them accountable as we hold any other public official accountable. So I am committed as a day one, minute one priority to an independent group of prosecutors that does not rely day to day on those same officers that they would seek to prosecute when they commit misconduct. In my view, that's a conflict of interest and we need actual, real independence. The bigger question, because I think we're all going to be more or less in agreement on this one, is who is equipped to get this done? Because this is going to be no easy task. Until you become a prosecutor and realize that you need to not only rely on those officers to prove up violent crimes and then the next moment be able to hold them accountable, that's a difficult task. And I am the one here who has taken their time and actually prosecuted a political apparatus that then I had to go back and ask for funding for the office. That's the kind of accountability that I believe in, that is transparent and that is fair, and it provides equal accountability to everyone that we pay with public tax dollars.
Well, again, yes, absolutely. Police officers should be held to the highest possible standard, and it should be brought in. And I will also point out that I'm the only one here that has spent 30 years cross-examining police officers. That's what I've done. That's my bread and butter. That's what it means. You want to do it even more effectively, it's at the county attorney level. But you've got to be broader in this, because to make this really effective, and this does not in any way diminish what's been said already, you've got to have community buy-in in this. You've got to have the populations most affected by bad police officers in at the table. They've got to be talking with them. You've got to get their input and their evaluation of what's going on. You've got to rebuild the situation where people can trust police officers again and not have to worry that the person who's sworn to protect them is actually the one who's going to hurt them. That's why this is so important. And you have to have the community involved in this as well as just in the prosecutor's office. And I am committed to doing that.
This is a perfect, excuse me. That's why I had it on before. This is a perfect example of why we need to shift away from conceiving of prosecution as law enforcement and toward conceiving of it as justice enforcement. And I don't need to cross-examine police officers for another 20 years to know that. Nobody's above the law. It's that simple. When law enforcement violence goes unanswered, our community relationships are fractured. When our communities of color don't trust law enforcement, and understandably so, they don't report crime. And when we don't report crime, all of us are less safe. I absolutely commit to using all the vast resources in that office to solve this problem. And that includes using the AZ Post certified police officers who already work there as investigators to independently investigate incidents of law enforcement violence.
When elected as attorney, I will prosecute police misconduct. As a matter of fact, I've taken steps to do that already. When I was the chief prosecutor in the city of Glendale, I was charged with reviewing the police reports and making sure that an officer had a legal reason to stop a person. I did not hesitate as the chief prosecutor to dismiss those cases. So when I'm elected as county attorney, I will continue that work to hold law enforcement accountable for the injustice that they commit with our community. I will create a division of seasoned prosecutors as well as seasoned law enforcement officers who have committed, or who have demonstrated rather, a commitment to justice. We will then bring in members of the community as well to review these cases. The ultimate decision will be between the law enforcement and myself, but as again, I've demonstrated a commitment to making sure that we hold our law enforcement accountable, because the citizens should not fear the people who are sworn to protect and serve them. Thank you.
The relationship between prosecutors and law enforcement agents has become so familiar that it's very difficult for a prosecutor to truly be objective in evaluating allegations of misconduct, so that has to be an independent review. When a police officer in Glendale tases the groin of a man who's being restrained by multiple police officers, and that doesn't result in charges, you know it's a problem. Even so much of a problem that your Republican governor calls it a whitewash investigation. We have a county attorney who's been afraid to confront the issue of police officer misconduct. The way to confront it is to bring in independent prosecutors who have no career or personal connection to the agencies involved, and to have members of the community leaders whose constituents are directly impacted by cases of misconduct. You need lawyers who come in as prosecutors who don't have a prosecutorial background. Only by having a diverse body of people not connected to law enforcement directly that are involved can we make a fair assessment of when these allegations of misconduct should be brought.
What's up? Yeah.
All right, it's time to pick up our question cards. We're going to be passing a basket down the center aisle, so if you can pass your cards through the middle, you can use this collection bottle, and we will be answering audience questions. There's a couple more that we've prepared already. Starting again with Bob. While the faith community plays an enormous role in Maricopa County, often for good, powerful religious institutions can sometimes tragically become bastions for abuse when bad actors are allowed to operate with impunity. As humanists, we believe that accountability is essential to protect the most vulnerable among us, especially children. What will you do to protect the most vulnerable and who may encounter evidence of wrongdoing inside powerful religious institutions?
I will never pull a punch. And I see what they're really doing.
I'm just looking.
Our children is they're living out their own hypocrisy.
I'll be
They
there.
want to
Over
attack
there.
that I've gone out and the full extent of the law. I'm fine, because that's just economy. They should be embracing this kind of investigation, and if they don't, that's their problem. These things will be investigated to the full extent, it'll be done intelligently, and they will be brought to justice, period.
I just said this in response to the last question, nobody's above the law. That includes the rich and powerful, that includes the well-connected, and that includes powerful institutions, like religious institutions. I say that as a Catholic. A shitty Catholic. But, my faith was shaken by the decades of rampant child abuse and cover-ups in that church. So it's expensive for hope. So I absolutely commit to investigating and prosecuting all credible allegations, no matter where it is. And we do that according to the law, according to our Constitution. And we do that, just like we do everything else in that office, under a harm-based, community-oriented conception of justice.
As a prosecutor for 15 years, I have prosecuted thousands of cases. I have defended the rights of victims and children who are victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse. When elected as county attorney, if you all vote for me, I will continue that fight for the rights of children, the elderly, as well as women, or any type of victims, whether they're whatever orientation they are. The fact that it's a religious or a powerful institution, that does not make a difference. No one is above the law, and if there is a violation, it will make a chief priority of our office to prosecute everyone to the fullest extent for any type of crime against a child, a woman, or the elderly. Thank you.
You know, I've heard that democracy dies in darkness, and I think it's also true that corruption breeds there. And so it's problematic when institutions are able to hide under a cloak of secrecy, which we've seen happen, as everyone famously knows about the cover-ups in the Catholic Church that rock that community. Clergy members are not above the law and should be held to the same standards. So when they seek to cover up or enable crimes, then they should be held accountable in the same way anyone else in the community is. You know, the University of Virginia Law School published a study that said the majority of clergy want the opportunity to report crimes if they deem that they're too serious to let these people out on the streets. So we have a clergy protection in Arizona where people can invoke a privilege that prohibits a clergy member from testifying about admission to serious crimes like homicide and child abuse. Clergy members support changing those laws, and those are things that we need to take a good hard look at, because some crimes are too serious to invoke that privilege. And the benefit to the public in improving safety for children, the most vulnerable, outweighs that privilege in some cases.
As a prosecutor in Indiana, I took on child-on-child sexual assault cases. And that experience has taught me the degree of skill and time and resources it takes to get these kinds of cases right. I also learned about what we should expect from our most vulnerable. Many of our survivors are so surprised or confused or betrayed that they might not physically resist. You should expect that they might dissociate, they might recount events in a scattered, non-linear timeline, and we should even expect they might not come forward for years, if not decades, after the triggering event happened, and even then, not until another triggering event occurs. We need to get these cases right. And that's why I think criminal justice reform is so important, because if we stop spending our time on low-level possession cases, if we can treat addiction instead of incarcerating it, we're going to have time for these very important cases to be able to give them the attention that they deserve.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with Will for the next question. Historically, county attorneys have been one of the biggest opponents of criminal justice reform at the state capitol. Will you commit to using the power of your office to advocate for proposed laws that will reduce the prison population and speak out against any proposed laws that will increase the prison population, like mandatory minimum sentencing laws?
So I think this was maybe the second bill that my good friend Senator Casada filed this session. Like, the first person to endorse me in this campaign. So the answer is yes. And this time, that's it. That's the tweet.
Yes, I will also rally or lobby to reduce the prison incarceration. As I mentioned earlier, right now we are incarcerating people who are mentally ill, so we have that revolving door. What we need to do is focus on diversion programs and programs for reentry, so that way we can then focus our dollars, our taxpayer dollars, on violent and victim crimes that we focus on. Thank you.
Prosecutors frequently say that they don't write the law, they just enforce the law. But in 2018, there were 14 criminal justice reform bills that went before the Arizona State Legislature, and Bill Montgomery killed those. It is an absolute farce for a politician to say he's only enforcing the law when he's behind the scenes creating the law. Absolutely, 100%, I will follow in his tradition of influencing what laws are passed. I'm just going to make sure that the laws that are passing are the ones that are smart instead of foolish.
Yes, absolutely. It is definitely the job of this office to be a champion and cheerleader for criminal justice reform.
We spend around $30,000 a year to incarcerate somebody, and we spend about $3,500 to educate somebody in this state. You want to reduce this prison population by ending the 85% thing? Yeah, that's just smart. You want to give people a chance so they can work out and re-enter to make us all safer? Yeah, just that. That's just smart. I too am a Roman Catholic. And if it means anything, it means that nobody is beyond redemption, which means you give people a chance to work their way out. That's just smart. And it's not only just smart, it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. So now, wait, can you hear me? We're going to get into the fun part of tonight, the audience questions. So we have all your postcards, and what we're going to do is we're going to call a person to stand up. We have a couple microphone runners. We're going to bring you your question back. If I call your name, and you can read it to whoever candidate that you want to ask, or if it's for all of them, that as well. So I'm going to start with Michelle Rose from Tempe, if you could stand up. And then the next person will be after Michelle is Dave Braun from Phoenix.
First, oh, right there. Oh.
Hi, my name is Michelle Rose. I live in Tempe. This question is for all of the candidates. If your office learns an officer was or gets added to the quote-unquote Brady list, would your office review cases in which their testimony was used?
You want me to start first?
Sure. Thank you.
Do I get a microphone?
I have to yell.
Okay, do that too. Well, look, that bill that's been proposed specifically that takes officers, et cetera, that is absolutely absurd. It is a violation of the Constitution that if an officer has been a liar and a perjurer and has other misconduct, that the defendant has a right to be able to cross-examine them on it. The right of cross-examination means nothing if the police are able to hide or the prosecutors are able to hide what the prior misconduct is. This is fundamental stuff. Again, if you don't get this, maybe it's because I'm a constitutional historian, this stuff bugs me, but if you don't get this, you're just not American, period, all right? If you don't love America that way, then go live someplace else, period, all right? You need to find out what is happening, and this way of hiding these bills is exactly what has happened. Most of the wrongful convictions are some way related to perjured police testimony, and that is a continuing problem in the system. And I don't care what the law says, all of that stuff is going to be turned over, period.
Thank you for the question, Michelle. Absolutely, transparent Brady lists are one of the most important things that we can do with this office to put pressure on law enforcement agencies to remove the bad actors that are fracturing our relationships between law enforcement and communities of color. I just answered a question by Jared Keenan on Twitter about this right before we came here, and I told you about my transparency policy there. And it's one of the #1 platforms on my campaign page. So night2020.com, go check it out. It's been up there for months. But it's only one way. so we can start doing that. We also need to work to repeal qualified immunity. Qualified immunity for the uninitiated is the doctrine that allows officers, law enforcement actors acting under color of law to get away with violating your constitutional rights, as long as we can't point to a single case where they did it in that exact way before in that same exact jurisdiction. Because how can we expect them to understand all these complicated laws, right? It's fundamentally unfair, and we've got to depart from it. And we're currently researching and drafting proposals to depart from that at the state level and implement some small claims constitutional violation courts where we can redress those injuries when they don't rise to that extreme level.
The truthfulness of an officer or the lack thereof is crucial for a person who is facing charges to know. When a person is going to trial, and if they have a prior felony conviction, and that person testifies, the jury has a right to know, and they actually get a jury instruction letting the jurors know that that accused person or the person on trial has a felony conviction, and they tell the jurors that you can take that information into account in determining whether or not you're going to believe the accused, their story. So conversely, if an officer has a Brady violation, that information needs to be shared with the jury as well. In 2018, there was a record number of exonerations, and 79% of those exonerations were because of police and prosecutorial lying. So it is incumbent that we make sure that we let people who are accused know which officers are being untruthful. Thank you.
You know, when I was recently interviewed by the AZ Mirror on the bill, the Brady bill that's going through the state legislature right now, one of the criticisms from the other side is that if you're saying that we should disclose all of this police officer misconduct, you're creating these harsh consequences for the officer. So I want to address the issue of people who support law enforcement, which I think we all do, who believe that officers deserve some protection. The issue in these cases is if we're hiding information from the defense that could exonerate somebody whose life is on the line, then we are creating a systemically unjust system. We can deal with the consequences to the officer in a variety of ways, and those should be humane just as they are for criminal defendants, but we can't conceal from people whose lives are on the line information that could tend to exonerate them. Police officers have a tough job, there's no question about it, but they have this incredible power, and people in the community deserve to know who we are entrusting that amazing power to, so that we can hold them accountable and make sure that the laws are being enforced in a humane and just and fair way.
I understand the question, right? It's not just how can we make our Brady list more transparent, but also what do we do with those convictions after they're obtained? And the answer to that question is that on day one, minute one, we create a conviction integrity unit. We already have one model out here in Pima County, and all over the nation, these have been shown to work. These are independent review councils, and they work best when your prosecutor has bought into the idea that a system of humans is going to make mistakes, either negligent ones or intentional ones, and is bought into having clarity and transparency. So it's a day one, minute one concern of mine that we create such a unit that's devoted to examining those past convictions and make sure that this most important area we get right.
After David's question, we have Hayden, I'm sorry if I butcher this, Baloo? Baloo. You're next. Wade? She'll bring you the mic, you're next.
Oh, yes, David. Oh, I see. Oh, sorry.
Take it away, David.
Thank you very much. This question is for Mrs. Gunnigal. A few months ago, we all learned about 2 women dying allegedly connected to APS turning off their electricity during the heat of the Arizona summer. I've got a couple of questions about this. Should these deaths be investigated as unlawful homicides? Were the actions by APS criminal? And also, the current Republican county attorney has already accepted $2,000 from APS. Is that donation akin to bribery? Would you accept a campaign contribution from APS?
Thank
Wow,
you,
that's
Noah.
quite a question. Okay, let's unpack that for a second. So first, we need a county attorney who is not just prepared to hold individuals and the elected accountable, but also corporations when they kill people through negligence or in this case, greed. So it was a priority as soon as I started running to take the Climate Strike pledge, and I am not taking any money from APS or any other fossil fuel industry, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because I see conflicts of interest like this. I see instances where a case like that could land on the county attorney's desk, and it deserves to be reviewed for what it is, a possible negligent manslaughter.
Can I respond to that question, please?
Well, how are we doing
A little
this?
bit.
Are we all gonna respond to the
Because that's the question I think we all deserve to answer, whether
Yeah,
we take
yeah,
that
yeah.
money. And the answer is flatly no, 100%. In fact, if it weren't for this campaign, I would have been local counsel on that case, that $183 million rate hike case that started today at the Corporation Commission. So no, I'm not taking any money from APS either. And while we do need to investigate things like that, we can't prejudge them, nor should we be planting questions.
Okay. Well, bridging that, I would actually like to ask that question of Alistair Adele, but unfortunately, she didn't come here to answer the question, all right? Look, I think it's important that we maintain what we're here about. We all want criminal justice reform. Yes, I would look into investigating APS. No, I will not take APS money, nor will I take money from any institution that I might want to prosecute. And I agree that we should prosecute institutions as well as individuals. You have to have the courage to do that. And as Democrats in this race who have presumably common values, we should all be focused and not lose the greater goal, which we could talk about directly with Alistair Adele, but she decided not to show up. That's the issue. Thank you.
Anybody else want to respond to that question?
I don't think APS is interested in giving me any money, but I wouldn't take it if they offered. I think it's essential that the county attorney's office takes a role in prosecuting public corruption in powerful entities throughout Arizona. I agree that it's an issue that should be investigated, and the decision at the end of the day needs to be based on whether or not the elements of the crimes are met by the actions that were taken at APS. And so there shouldn't be any fear on the part of the prosecutor to go after large and powerful entities. When they commit crimes, they should be charged just like anybody else.
And I will echo the sentiment of my esteemed counsel here. I also will not take any money from APS. And I agree as well that we need to look at the elements of any alleged charge. And if the elements are met, regardless of whether it's an individual or corporation, then that person or corporation will be charged. Thank you.
After Hayden's question, it'll be Jared.
This is a question for all of you. So when I was 15 years old here in Arizona, I was charged as an adult for a non-dangerous felony offense, and I went to adult jail. I was offered a plea agreement, and I accepted it because I was afraid of going to trial. I was afraid that the punishment would be worse just for the audacity of going to trial. And I had pretty poor defense counsel at the time too. There's a lot of other factors. But here's my question. Will you penalize people for seeking the Constitution to a trial? And how? Why? Why not?
Who do you want to answer?
I'm gonna start with Will this time. We're gonna kind of do what we did last time.
Absolutely not. Trial tax and the way that's coerced from people with our mandatory minimums, with our tough on crime mentality and alleging of every single prior, and the money bail system that we have right now. It's fundamentally unfair that keeps people incarcerated and pressures them to do that. Your pressures were different. Your pressures were as a young man. But absolutely not. We should not be coercing people into guilty pleas. That's one of the #1 ways that we end up with wrongful convictions, innocent people pleading guilty to things that they shouldn't, because of that trial tax that scared you, that coerced you. So no, we cut back on all of those institutions that are pushing us in that direction, and we observe all of your constitutional rights.
First of all, I want to say that it's a shame that a 15-year-old should be charged as an adult. As a defense attorney, I've recently had a number of cases of juveniles who are charged as adults, and the county attorney's office have a habit of, they may start with a higher charge and then ultimately bring it down to a lower charge. But what happens is that juvenile is still facing a felony for the rest of his life. So when elected as county attorney, I will make sure that we have more diversion programs. Because if we give an opportunity to a young man, a young woman, even an adult, if we give them the opportunity to have services to address any underlying issues, and then once they have those personalized services, we can dismiss any charges, so that way that felony is not following that person for the rest of their life. Because once a person has a felony, it impacts their ability to have a job and housing. Lastly, what I would do is make sure that I would lobby against mandatory minimum sentencing. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. You and people like you are the reason that I became a defense attorney. And I've spent countless nights awake at night thinking about every single argument and everything that I was going to say the next day in court, because I had a client about your age who, if I didn't say the right things, or I didn't make the right arguments, or I didn't ask the witnesses the right question, would go to prison for 30 or 40 years for crimes that I didn't believe they were guilty of. It's absolutely essential that the prosecution creates, that Maricopa County creates a culture where prosecutors pursue the correct outcome to maximize the potential that this person who's being prosecuted will be rehabilitated and turn away from a life of crime, and that the innocent are protected. And so prosecutors have the discretion to dismiss allegations at the time of sentencing that would make their sentences mandatory prison. Prosecutors in my office would be given discretion to dismiss allegations if the sentence after trial conviction led to an unjust result. And we need to start doing that on day one.
Yes, the trial tax is real. In fact, the trial tax is part of office policy at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office as it currently stands. Let me explain what that means. We have these institutions called early disposition courts. The idea being that the faster we can move a case through the system, perhaps the more just we can be and the more judicious we can be with resources. And let me tell you what that looks like. And without the full discovery and the full ability for your defense attorney to evaluate the case on the merits. County attorneys are told that the offer has to be, if you decline that initial offer and the case moves forward. I would love to see the resurgence of a trial here in Maricopa County, because as it stands right now, 95% of our cases are decided via pleas instead of via trial, which is really our public's ultimate way of testing the government and making sure that they have the evidence that they say they have when someone is charged with a crime.
Absolutely, we've got to preserve the right to trial. I'm going to pick up on what Julie was just talking about. You know what that disposition court is really about? $1,750 in fines, fees, and surcharges for a joint. That's what it is. Huge part of county government is actually funded by the prosecution of marijuana. That's what it's about. You wonder why the prior county attorney was opposing marijuana because it's a gateway drug and all this stuff? No, it was about $1,750 in fines, fees, and surcharges. That's what it's about. He then turned around and spent $500,000 to conduct a study that said juveniles like you were are somehow just as responsible as adults. And everybody knows the social science data doesn't allow that. Have you had your conviction expunged?
No, I'm still on parole.
Okay, after you're on parole, assuming, well, can't do this if I'm county attorney, but if I'm not, you come to my office and I'll move to expunge your conviction immediately, and I'll do it for you for free, okay?
Thanks. After Jared's question, it'll be Athena Roberts from Scottsdale. Can you raise your hand? Athena? Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you. The presumption of innocence is a fundamental constitutional right, yet every day 75% of people in our state jails are there pre-trial. How will you work as county attorney to end this cash for freedom system?
Start with Tamika.
Thank you. If elected as county attorney, I will make the presumption, OR release, so release on their own recognizance. Under Rule 7.2, judges are told that a person should be released presumptively on their own. What happens though, however, is if a person has a failure to appear or it's presumed that there is a danger to the society, then that is the only time that a judge is supposed to issue a cash bail. What happens routinely now though is the prosecutor's office, they will routinely ask for a bond. So what happens is the judge always generally defers to what the prosecution wants. As Julie mentioned earlier, it is a shame that in this society right now, it is better for a person who is rich and guilty than innocent and poor.
Thank you.
Well, there's two issues that typically justify the argument to keep somebody in custody pre-conviction, and that is that there is a threat to the community and that they won't return back to court. So the threat to the community, a specific articulable threat to someone in the community, I think is the only real justification that we have for keeping people incarcerated. Anyone that's in custody for a drug possession crime, for a property crime, for even drug sales crime, where there's no threat to the community, specifically their safety, there should be a presumption that that person should be released. When it comes to the fear that people will not return to trial, the most common example of people who are kept in custody for that problem are people who are homeless. We could resolve this issue by taking away the money, the massive amounts of money that we spend on incarcerating people pre-trial, and implementing common sense housing solutions for people that are homeless in our community. We can't be locking up people simply because they're poor, and that's what the cash bail system does.
Yes, did you know that cash bail is illegal worldwide? We're one of only 2 countries in the entire world that uses it. The other is the Philippines. And it's because it produces these sorts of injustices where someone has to pay for their freedom, and it tends to coerce pleas and really give a bargaining chip to the prosecutor. We need to totally eliminate cash bail. I committed to it in my ACLU questionnaire, and I believe that it is something that we can do on day one. Now, yes, there are still people who perhaps present a danger to the community or a risk of flight, and the great news is that in Arizona, we have a procedure to hold them if there is an articulable threat, and the prosecutor can prove that. But until that point in time, we should not be holding someone for no other reason than that they don't have the money.
Well, just to follow up, with respect to, unfortunately, you can't do that day one. I'm fully committed to doing this, but you have to actually have a statutory change and perhaps a constitutional change in the Arizona Constitution because it provides for cash bail. That's absurd. That has to be dealt with directly. Do you want to know how much you spend as a county taxpayer the first day somebody's in jail? $320. Every subsequent day, it's $125. $46,000 a year, just about, to hold somebody in the county jail. That is absurd. This isn't dangerous people. These are people who are poor, like Ryan said, who just are homeless. You want to really take care of that problem? Give them a $30 Uber voucher and give them a text message of their court date, and they will make it to court. You don't have to stick them in jail at your expense. That money can be better used someplace else And as county attorney, I will go to the legislature and make this argument. And by the way, the model for that we already have. It's the Bail Reform Act in federal court. It works great, and they don't use cash bonds. They have other means to do it, and we can do that here.
Thank you, Bob.
Innocent until proven guilty is a fundamental bedrock of our government, our society. So let's remember what we're talking about here is innocent people, people that have not been convicted, being locked up behind bars pending trial. In 2016, Chief Justice Scott Bales, you might have heard of him, smart guy, he commissioned a task force called the Task Force on Fair Justice for All. And it's important because this was bipartisan, across aisle, and it included many stakeholders, prosecutors, people from the jail, people from the bond industry, and the defense industry. And they studied this, and all of them concluded that after 72 hours of pretrial detention, crime and recidivism go up. It makes us less safe. And that makes sense when you think about it. What would happen to you if you were uprooted from your life? After 72 hours, you lose homes, you lose jobs, relationships crumble, and when you don't have that support structure, then you don't have a lot of opportunity. The bottom line is that the bond industry is a for-profit industry. It is morally bankrupt, and it doesn't accomplish the purposes of releasing somebody pre-trial, which is to make sure that they come back. The law says use the least restrictive means to accomplish that, and we have all kinds of incredible technology today to use that. Cash bail needs that.
Thanks, Bob. Next question, will Heather Trammell raise her hand?
Hi, I'm Athena Roberts. I live in Scottsdale, and this is for all candidates, please. For possession of what currently legal drugs would you refuse to prosecute? Does that make sense?
Did you say? Yeah.
For possession of, I want to know.
Are you gonna prosecute marijuana?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. You're gonna prosecute marijuana, all this stuff. I want to know, are you gonna say flat, no, I'm not prosecuting, so just let him go? Or are you gonna be like, yeah, which ones?
I think you can, I don't want to go ahead. You'll get a chorus here of no to marijuana. Fine.
Okay.
I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, she wants to know what drugs you will prosecute for possession, is that correct?
Or not.
Or not.
Yeah.
I mean, who's turn is it?
And I'm gonna start with Ryan first.
I'll go, yeah. So everyone on this stage has committed to not prosecuting marijuana, and actually Alistair Adele, who's the current county attorney, has also stopped prosecuting marijuana, but she still wants it to go to the city so they can be prosecuted as misdemeanors. I don't believe that marijuana should be prosecuted in the city or in the county. I'm not going to stop charging other drug offenses, although I think that there's some promise with respect to some hallucinogenics that have really promising impact for solving problems like PTSD and things like that. It's just too early right now to stop prosecuting those. I will commit to not sending anyone to prison for personal possession, and the vast majority of people who are prosecuted for these crimes would receive diversion programs. It's all about implementing effective methods of dealing with things like the opioid crisis right now. It can't be ignored, but we shouldn't be doing something that adds fuel to the fire, like throwing them in prison or incarcerating them.
And for what it's worth, I think that's the right approach. I mean, I know actually all of us have said non-prosecution of marijuana offenses, but I think we will, right? Because when it comes to so many other drugs, when it comes to our commitment to stop prosecuting addiction, that's what we're really after, right? We need to look at that because those cases can and should receive diversion. That is what I am offering, and that is what I plan to do, is bus diversion programs where people who are facing addiction issues can go before they ever have anything on their record in terms of a conviction. I think that's really important too. Being able to earn that real second chance without a conviction on your record before you enter in a diversion program.
I'm not gonna add anything to this. This has been wonderful. I agree with that. Let's just focus on what we need to focus on. This society has a problem with substance abuse. And we want to always use the criminal justice system to try to solve it. It is the worst system and way to do it. We need to attend to the problem of substance abuse. This problem of substance abuse you ask anybody in the system, the worst drug in society is alcohol. I mean, it's enough to make you want to drink. I mean, we need to attend to the underlying problems and not depend on the criminal justice system to lock people up for it. That's why there is a need for court going on. We need to expand on that. We need to give people the avenues to get out of addictions. That's the way you begin to deal with the opioid crisis, not running around charging people for a joint and extracting $1,750 to hide the costs of criminal justice in Maricopa County.
I agree, it is a colossal waste of resources, not just financial, but human resources for us to be handling this stuff at the Superior Court at the felony level. And the reality of diversion programs, particularly with substance use disorders, is people are gonna fail. And so that means they're gonna still be prosecuted. Then what are we gonna do? Give them probation? That means more convictions on the record. What if they fail on probation? That means prison. That means prison for simple drug possession. This doesn't warrant the attention of our Superior Court. And with my plan to reduce the prison population and reduce the incarceration in the county, we're gonna save more than $400 million per year. With that money, we can create civil mechanisms and resources to treat this like what it is, a public health crisis.
I agree as well. Mental health and substance abuse are public health issues, not criminal issues. So I will create robust diversion programs to address those needs. And as Will pointed out, when a person is addicted to something, it is a difficult task for them to get past it. But I will commit to make sure that when a person, we will walk that person through those addiction jail bathroom with a syringe in his arm. They wanted to give him 8.5 years in prison. That is absolutely unacceptable. So again, possession of a drug will not be prosecuted. We will make sure that we get treatment for those addictions. Thank you.
The next question, can I get everybody? Yeah. Okay. The next person after this is Sophia Alicia.
Hello, I'm Sophia. Out of the courtroom, how have you made an effort to connect with the communities most impacted by overseas people?
Who's first on this?
It's Julie's turn first.
Yeah, could you repeat just one more time? The question is, what have I done outside of the courtroom?
Out of the courtroom, how have you made an effort to connect with the communities most impacted by oversight?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first jumped into this race, one of the things that I did is I sat down with a very wise woman who told me, hey, Julie, you're not alone. There are 40 plus organizations working here on the ground on these issues with you, right? It's everyone from teachers, is unexpected to attorneys. It is unexpected allies that span everywhere from the Americans for Prosperity to Lucia, who are fighting for what is right in these systems. So what have I done? I have actively engaged in these groups. I have shown up to meetings. I have talked with anyone who will listen. I have sat at coffees every single Saturday and made myself available to the community so that I can learn about what you think are the big issues in Maricopa County with our justice system, and that you can hear from me and know that how I'm going to advocate for you in this position.
I've spent 30 years trying to communicate and deal directly with these different communities who have been marginalized and need the attention. I've started my career for 17 years in the Federal Public Defender's Office. I've defended death penalty cases in the county offices. At the same time, I was part of the original committee that started the Innocence Project here in Arizona. These are primarily focused on marginalized groups. I've been on the board of directors of the ACLU. I'm currently on the Black Mothers Forum, which is attending to the issues of the school to prison pipeline and all that's connected with that. This year alone, I think I've donated about 300 hours taking cases for the Black Mothers Forum and doing that. this is crucial stuff. And many of my clients don't speak English, so I deal with them in Spanish. If you give me an extra 60 seconds, I'll answer this question in Spanish. Okay? You've got to talk to people where they are. You've got to understand where they're coming from. And that's what I've tried to be a champion of my entire life and my entire career. Otherwise, being a lawyer is just a job. And I'm not in it to just have a job. I'm in it because of the change we can do and affect people's lives who are the most marginalized.
Thank you, Bob.
I was born in one of those communities, and I live today in those communities because it is incredibly important to understand that. The only reason I'm a lawyer is because of that personal perspective. I have worked my entire career to help and advocate with those communities, Commission on Minorities in the Judiciary, helping diversify the bench with access to justice, fighting against our eviction crisis that impacts those communities. As a leader for the local and national Hispanic Bar Associations, fighting for immigrant rights, fighting for diversity pipeline programs to uplift those communities. But when this campaign started, we realized that I needed to do more with the people, not just the lawyers, not just the judges, not just the government. And so I aggressively sought out, and I will continue to, I'd love to sit down with you and talk and hear what you have to say. But aggressively sought out voices in those communities because mine's just one perspective. So I sought them out, I will continue to, so that we can earn their trust, and I'll listen, and that's all of them. The NAACP, Lucha, Bolet in Action, Mass Liberation, Phoenix Black Organizing Collective, Black Lives Matter. I invite all of you, tell me your concerns, and on the back end, we're gonna keep it going by empowering you as an oversight.
So I am a member of the people who are impacted most by law enforcement. I interact with people in the community as well. During this journey, I have also connected with Lucha and other organizations to understand cultures who I am not familiar with. I admit that the last 17 years I have been a parent, raising my child, so I have been more centrally focused. But again, being a woman of color, being a mother, I am interested in our youth because the youth are our future. I've done Black Lives Matter cases and worked with a lot of gangs in South Phoenix. So I will continue to do the work in the community and make sure that I talk to the community to understand what the issues are so that I can make sure that we can make a positive impact on the lives of everyone. Thank you.
So I am the recipient of a privilege that I did nothing to earn. And I'm aware of that. And the only way that I can understand the plight of people who look different than me is to spend as much time in those communities as I can. Which is why I was the only white member of the Black Student Union at one of the whitest universities in the country, BYU. Like the president of BYU, which was something kind of cool to be a part of. But really, this office was because I spoke out at a Mesa City Council meeting 2 years ago against the privatization of incarceration. I volunteered at an immigration legal clinic here in Mesa to offer free legal counsel to people who are undocumented immigrants who are facing legal situations. I represented people of color pro bono who don't have the means to hire attorneys in misdemeanor courts where they don't get a free lawyer. So I've spent as much time as I can to just expose myself to people who have a different background, a different experience than me, because that's really the only way that I can truly understand the pain that people are going through that I didn't experience.
Thank you, everyone. I think that is a perfect transition to thank the candidates tonight for coming, being involved in this community. If we didn't get to your question, please feel free to stay after and ask the candidates yourselves, or you can always put your question to them online. And thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I appreciate it, and I'll let Luke take it away.
Well, I think we all have a lot to think about as we make our decision on who to vote for.
All right, y'all. I'm gonna close this out. Tempe against police violence
Whoever
out.
you choose, if you are